Hello and welcome to the Astrocast. I am Brad and I'm joined here tonight, as always, by...
Theff.
And Mataspore.
Awesome. So, tonight we will go through our kind of hobby roundup, what have we all been doing, and then we'll be having a discussion on 3D printing. What is it and what does it mean for the hobby? So, who would like to go first on the hobby roundup?
I'll jump in. I've done significantly less than what I talked about last episode, just because it's been a week, not a lot longer. I've also been visited by Nurgle, who has done some unpleasant things to my legs, so I've not been in the best of health over the last week, but I have been reading Flight of the Eisenstein, which has been interesting so far. It's weird to kind of go back to the events, because I feel like the first three books are a nice little self-contained trilogy, and then we kind of go back again, and now we see it from Garrow's point of view, and interested to see how it ends up. In other news, I have taken delivery of 3 very pleasant little models from Shapeways, one of which is a full-coloured 3D printed Porg, which has joined the flock downstairs, and I will probably not see again because it's now on Amy's desk. But I've also got Cal Kestis and BD1 from Jedi Fallen Order, the video game, and Samus from the Metroid games, both in 40k scale. So looking forward to cleaning them up, basing them, and working out how the fuck I'm going to get to all the detail on them, because they are beautifully detailed. Like, even at 28mm heroic, all of Cal's belt loops are modelled with a little hole in the middle. Like, that level of detail.
What you can get on 3D printing is just insane, and that's partly what we'll be having the main discussion on it later. Do you know what it is? Is it resin, or is it... Because I have got bought from Shapeways before. I don't remember if you remember at uni, I had a Battlestar Pegasus.
Yes.
And that was done out in their... what was it called? It was really grainy. It had a really grainy feel to it, and I think that probably put me off 3D printing for a while.
This is what they call their smoothest plastic. I'm not sure of the exact material. I think it's a PLA rather than anything else. But yeah, just the insane level of detail. It's smooth as all hell. Like, I shine a light through the back of Cal's head and I can see his facial expression. Like, you don't get that on some decent injection molded miniatures these days.
No, that is particularly impressive.
It's very cool.
Cool.
Having sat here holding up props for an entirely audio medium, but I'll send you over some photos.
There'll be Shotos in the
Shotos in the photos. No.
Let me put my teeth back in. I'll have another go. There'll be photos. There'll be photos in the show notes.
There we go. Right. Okay.
I can speak.
Yeah, that's good. We can all speak, I think, in theory. I tell you what. Right. I vaguely remember, in a sort of a side comment, because I haven't done much with the little plastic model thingamajiggies this week, as will not really change very often, because as we've discussed, I'm much more invested in the lore side than the making side. But I do remember it being said that apparently Magic the Gathering counts towards this hobby thing.
Yep.
And if it does, then yes, I have done quite a lot, mostly by virtue of having nothing else to do.
Yep.
There's nothing new, but the problem with new is that I can't really add more Magic the Gathering cards without some sort of weight-related disaster taking place underneath my bed. Because I haven't counted, but I've got something in the region of a few thousand of the damn things. So I might have decided to completely re-go through several of my decks with the cards that I have available, because a lot of them were made before I had such a vast collection, and see if I can make them any better. And this in turn led to me perusing through the Magic Card Trader website, which is a terrible thing for me to do because it inevitably winds up costing me a great deal of money. And Theff can attest that literally just before this little recording, me and him were having a discussion as to how to make his Life Gain Angel deck absolutely terrifying with one of the newer cards from Rise of Zendikar, which is wonderful. It's not so much. I don't know if it truly counts because a lot of the hobby is just in my head and reshuffling bits of cardboard. There's no actual making stuff, but certainly that's taken a lot of my enthusiasm over the last week, and hopefully this counts as a hobby because it actually gives me something to talk about during these little segments, rather than saying no. I am a failure once more.
Oh.
I think that counts.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that.
I think a Magic episode at some point is due.
I would love to do a Magic the Gathering episode at some point.
I am more than happy for you to chat about Magic the Gathering. I have seen it, but it's always been like, I've got enough expensive hobbies. I don't need another one.
See, I was sold as, you can buy this deck, and that's the only deck you'll ever need. I remember those words.
Yeah,
I remember them well.
I believe that also applies to X-Wing and half a dozen other various nerdy pursuits. Oh, you only need 4 ships?
It's like, it's oh god, I remember that as well. It's like you know they're lying. You know that they're lying from the very beginning, but you just so desperately want to believe them.
Yeah. It's how every hobby starts. Oh, you only need this one battle box, and that'll give you all the models you need to play the game. You lie.
Yes, and there you go, 5 years down the line, and now you're seriously considering paying big 3-digit money for a single copy of Jace the Mind Sculptor, because he would fit so well in that blue deck that you've so very nearly finished putting together.
And this is why I'm not getting into Magic the Gathering, especially as I'm now trying to find a surfboard for my squats. Because someone just...
Oh, well, speaking of your hobby, Brad, there we go.
So actually, I've done no work on my squats for a while, although I have been doing very silly second edition stuff recently. So I am now on, as of recording, I am on day 30 of my hobby streak.
Yay.
And I have finished 10 metal and plastic second edition, maybe Rogue Trader Terminators. Like the second of the... So there was kind of like the original Terminators, and there was the first run of metal Terminators, and this is a mixture of the first run of metal and the first run of plastic. A while ago, Theff sent me a message saying, I'm getting rid of my Space Marine bits. Do you want some? And I said yes, and there was quite a few metal ones. So it's kind of been... I've been on a big second edition kick still, because I think it's just nice and bright and colourful. It's grim dark, but it's also luminous bright. So I've been working my way through that. So I have now finished them. So I have 10 Terminators, with a mixture of Power Fists and Storm Bolters, Chain Fists, Thunderhammer. I think I have every weapon option, but not enough to make... I've got enough to make one normal Terminator squad, and I haven't got enough to make an Assault squad or a second squad. So I might pick up some more at the moment, but they're all done. They're all painted. They're not varnished yet, and they're not got transfers on, just because I tend to leave it a bit of time, because I'm sure I've spotted something I've missed.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Give a break. So I'm continuing the second edition vibe, and I'm currently painting up the second model of Calgar. So not Dino Death's taking a poo Calgar, but also not Terminator armored or Primaris Calgar, the original one. I'm also doing a Standard Bearer, a Tech Marine, an Apothecary. They're all going to be kind of a command squad, depending on what edition I choose to run it in, because I'm trying to look at it as a force I can play in any edition. So I'm leaving them on 25mm bases, and I'm going to print off some expanders to get them out to the right size for, say, 8th edition, because they should be on 32s for 8th and 9th, sorry. Terminators need to be on 40s, so that's a little bit down the line. The other model I've been working on, because this force is silly, because I'm trying to include something from every edition of the game. And when I mean that, it's like a model or a squad from each edition.
Yeah.
So I'm currently working on a Rogue Trader Medic. So he's a proper classic Womble Marine. He is so wonky and adorable, it's brilliant. and he is about half the size of a Primaris. It is quite funny. I put a Primaris behind him, and he could literally rest his gun on his head. The scale creep is not so bad between the second edition models and the first edition models, but it's still relatively noticeable. The other thing I did today, hobby-wise, is I pre-ordered Stargrave, which is from Osprey Games. Now, it sounds interesting. It's a sci-fi skirmish game where you build up your crew of space people and go and fight. That's all I kind of know about it at the moment, but it looked interesting, and it's the spiritual successor to another Osprey game called Frostgrave.
I've heard of that.
That's it. I believe it's from the same guy, but I would have to check. So Frostgrave is wizards exploring a city that's been wiped out by a big blizzard, and there's all sorts of nasties. It's very much the spiritual successor to Mordheim.
Nice.
But not made by GW, and a lot kind of more... there's a lot of very good generic fantasy models within that line.
Yeah.
I would say if you're looking to buy D&D models, it's probably a good place to start, because there's lots of good stuff, and they have to do stuff like there's like evil knights and good knights for your characters. So they have like lots of the same class. So they have like an apothecary, but they'll have it in different flavors. So there'll be like a cultist apothecary, a barbarian apothecary, a kind of wizards. It's quite nice because it's the same character archetypes, but through a different lens, which is quite cool. So that comes out on the 29th of April. I will let you know when I've picked it up and read it to see if it's any good. But it was only 18 quid on Amazon, so for the core, for a hardback cool core rulebook, I thought it was worth it.
And that's
my second non-GW game I've bought in this year, because I've also bought the Gaslands rulebook.
Does it count towards hobby? I guess it might count towards hobby. Amy and I have really gotten into Hot Wheels recently, so Gaslands needs to be played at some point.
Well, I now have the rules.
Yay!
And I have one car that I've broken apart and repainted, and it's basically just a Humvee with a massive gun put on the top.
Nice.
Excellent.
But it was very much... I picked it because I came across it and went, oh, this would be something quite cool to play with my brothers and possibly my dad at Christmas.
Yeah.
Obviously, then Christmas didn't happen because of the plague. But I've now got the rulebook, and I've now got some templates printed off as well. So, as I've mentioned printing several times, shall we move into our discussion on 3D printing?
Yes.
Okay, so 3D printing has been around for quite a while now. As I said, at uni, I remember buying a roughly Battlefleet Gothic scale Battlestar Pegasus for a campaign we were running at the time of Inquisimunda as my faction's flagship. And that was, I think, it was about 20 quid at the time, and it's not bad for what it was. It's not bad, but it kind of left the impression that 3D printing is all a bit not great.
It had ways to go, I think.
Had a ways to go is probably the way to do it. Then fast forward a few years down the road and moving to Reading, one of my mates, Callum, says, "Oh, shall we do a D&D campaign?" And he started printing out various miniatures for that. He had access to a 3D printer, and it was not bad. And the minis he got off it are pretty good, especially for kind of like Monster of the Week. It's like, oh, awesome. But I'd never really thought about buying it buying one myself, just because they seemed expensive and the quality wasn't quite there yet. So fast forward to this year, and I come across Kickstarter. I will say now that 3D printing Kickstarters are dangerous because they are incredibly good value, in quotation marks. And this was for a campaign called Hexton Hills, which it's essentially... do you remember Mighty Empires Games Workshop did a while ago? The kind of hex-based map campaign.
I've still got those tiles from years ago that we bought for that aforementioned Inquisimunda campaign.
Oh, nice. I think I've got a couple of because they gave one, because they did Planetary Empires, which is the 40k flavoured one.
That's the one I got. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I've got one because they gave away a couple of tiles free with White Dwarf when they did Planetary Empire, not Planetary Empires, the other one.
Yeah.
So I kind of came across this, and it was. I kind of thought, oh, actually, that's got quite a lot of use. This was about the time we were all talking about getting back into fantasy. So I thought, oh, that's ideal for building either a D&D world or a campaign to fight across.
Yeah, this looks
and
good.
They are really nice tiles. Now, I kind of thought that because my boss has a 3D printer, and he'd already said multiple times that if I want to use it, I can use it. So I thought, yeah, I will be able to print these off at some point. They're doing all sorts of stuff on it. So they're doing rivers, destroyed tiles, all sorts of lovely, cool stuff.
Yeah.
The problem with this kind of opened the floodgates a little bit. Because then I started thinking, because I wasn't driving to work and all this kind of stuff, I had more money in my hobby budget and just general expenditure than I would normally. So I thought, okay, maybe I could look into getting a 3D printer. Which then started saving up because, as I say, wasn't going to the pub, all this kind of stuff. All the kind of like money I would have spent on day-to-day socialising, that kind of stuff, wasn't being spent. So I thought, I'll save it up and put it into a 3D printer.
Yeah.
I kind of ummed and ahed about which one to go to for a while. There are kind of two ways you can go with 3D printing. There is resin 3D printers and filament FDM printers. Now, they both have their advantages and disadvantages. Resin, so the tiles you can see there are printed on a resin printer. And the quality you can get on resin is fantastic.
Yeah.
For those who don't know how it works, essentially you have a plate that sits on a LCD screen. The screen turns on, the resin cures a layer, the plate pulls back, cures the next layer. So it's photosensitive resin.
Yeah.
And basically pulls it out like that. Whereas FDM is literally shoots out a jet of hot plastic and moves around it.
Lol.
So these both have advantages and disadvantages. The resin ones are more of a faff because the resin is toxic.
Yeah.
So you have to clean it. You have to
little fun.
Yeah. So it's not bad, but it's kind of like you got to make sure you're wearing your gloves. You're wearing a mask, eye protection, that kind of stuff. It's the kind of thing that you should do in a garage. So
a standard trip to the shops in the current conditions.
Basically, yes. You need to wear your standard PPE. And you need to wipe everything down with IPA alcohol because that will break down the resin. And then you need to wash it in IPA. Well, I bought water washable resin, but I'm not convinced on that stuff. I think I'll stick to normal resin going forward. And then you've got to cure it. So you've got to cure the outer layer as well. Now, you can get some really good prints off this. I don't have a picture to hand, but I printed off a little Velociraptor. It's actually a real-life Velociraptor scale because I got confused on the Jurassic Park wiki over which was... because they had two sizes for the Velociraptor. They had the movie Velociraptor, which is what I wanted to print out, and then the real-world Velociraptor. Just to cause confusion.
Yeah.
And it's a really nice little print, and it's resin you can get some awesome results on, and it is comparably quite cheap. Well, both methods are cheap. Resin is more expensive per mini, but the quality is fantastic. Resin one, the filament ones, you still get a bit of lining. You can do stuff to mitigate it, but it's also a lot cheaper. So the idea would be I've now got two. I have the Elgu Mars Pro 2 and the Ender 5. Yeah, the Creatality Ender 5. The idea is I've got my resin one for minis and small stuff, and then I've got the FDM for larger stuff. Now, on the subject of large stuff, one of the other Kickstarters I backed was I've mentioned this multiple times to Theff, but Skies of Sordane, which is a ridiculous Kickstarter. And this is why I say they are good value in inverted commas. So, Skies of Sordane, now I bought at the Armada pledge, which was 80 Canadian dollars, which was about 60 British pounds. And for that, I have got 17 airships, and 95 minis to print. The thing is, so these are really, really cool minis. Every model they've done is fantastic. The airships are ridiculous though, because the airships are at D&D scale with fully modelled interiors.
Holy shit!
So they're pretty big.
Yeah. Sorry, just to interrupt. Brad, you're not going to get this reference, but Theff is. In the picture at the very top of the skies of Sordane, the boat on the right, it's the weather light.
Yeah, basically.
Clearly, the weather light.
We'll talk about this in another episode, I think.
Yeah. Apologies for interrupting.
Yeah, I think we'll go. I was going to go through the. I'll put a link to their My Mini Factories. I can't quite find it as such. So I've just shared their My Minis page, just so you can see what they've actually produced so far. So they've got a whole range of little animals, like mechanical animals, which are cool. The Gestar Dreadnought is the biggest one they will ever do. They have said multiple times, but they are not going any bigger. Just because it's about... How much did they say? It's about 100 to 150 quid's worth of resin to print off.
Jeez.
It's about 10 kilos of resin. I think they've said 10 to 15 kilos. No, that can't be right.
It's over a meter long.
It's over a meter long.
Jesus, bloody Christ! I wasn't. Oh yeah, okay. There we go. Pictures. Give me a sense of scale. What the? Holy crap!
Yeah, the one of the whole table, I think really shows off just how massive the thing is. And it's the kind of I'm glad they did it. I will probably never be able to justify printing that off, but I'm glad I've got the file for it. I think that the free ships in front of it are all kind of practical for me to print off at some point. They're usable on a day to day, and they'll get plenty of use. They're nicely designed, but they're not too specific. You could use them in most settings if you want an airship. I think I'm going to be printing off the frigate first. Is the one I'm going to print off when I'm back up to printing. But yeah, and this is what I want. This is one of the big, beautiful things with 3D printing in our hobby.
Yeah,
is 3D printing allows this to exist. If 3D printing did not exist, these ships would not exist. And why I say that is no company would be willing to make molds for this kind of stuff, to produce it in a more conventional manner.
Maybe Forge World? Maybe
Forge World. I think Forge World is probably the only, but that's because they're a subsidiary of Games Workshop, and there is already the community there to support it. The only reason they can afford to make a Titan at £1,000 is because they know someone will buy it.
Yeah.
Not many people, but there is enough people for it.
Yeah.
No. And I think they are made to order. I think they're not just set on the shelf.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of been my journey through 3D printing. There is other Kickstarters I've backed because they do come through as very good value.
Yeah.
As I say, I think they're now selling the Dreadnought they're selling for $65. So basically, what I paid for everything, they're charging for the Dreadnought at the moment.
So just looking at that, and I go, that would make an amazing Warcry campaign, let alone like set of games. Just an actual campaign could be fought within that miniature.
Yeah, miniature is possibly not the right term for it, but yeah, I say the other stuff they produce, like it's not just the airships. The airships are obviously what draws everyone in, but I think their characters are fantastic as well. It's very much an Arcano-punk setting, so it's high magical technology. People have it's very much. Have you seen the film Treasure Planet?
Yes.
It's very much that kind of world, and some of them I just look forward to getting my resin up and running and I can print some more of them off. The one thing I'll say with Elgu, they don't always have the best quality control. So my Z-axis is a bit warped. I mean, a new one is on its way, but bit of a faff. So that's kind of been my experience with 3D printing so far, and it's going to change the hobby, but probably not to the same extent some people think, is what I will say with 3D printing at the moment. Just because at the moment it is quite a faff, and the machines, although they're affordable, they are not cheap.
Yeah.
You are looking about, I had a look, for a resin printer, you're looking between £200 and £300 depending on what model you need, you want to go for. Plus there's all the peripheries like your first lot of resin, IPA, alcohol, gloves. Whilst the cost per mini is very cheap, you're talking pence per mini, it is a big outlay to get in. As it's not going to be something that I think every hobbyist gets, but they are now getting to the point where I think many will be able to afford it. If you've got your own home, if you've got somewhere to set up and run it, and you're willing to put the time to learn how to use it, they are incredibly powerful tools.
Oh, don't say that. That applies to me. God.
When it comes to how is this going to affect the hobby, specifically, I'll focus mostly on Games Workshop. I don't think it will affect them directly too much. The reason I'll say that is 40k is 40k. There is a very specific theme to it, and it's a very well-defended IP. I would say if your business is making Napoleonic soldiers or generic dude in chainmail, you might need to worry because there's probably someone on Patreon. That's the other side of 3D printing, Patreons. I am supporting. It's the first time I've got into Patreon. I've never touched Patreon before, but there is 2 which I now support. Someone on Patreon will probably be doing a better job than your small scale metal casting. I think you need to. Those are the companies you need to worry about. Games Workshop will probably be fine. But on the subject of 3D printing Patreons, there are some great ones out there. So the 2 I support, one of them is an independent guy, what you'd probably expect for a Patreon, and that is a guy called Mini Monsters Mayhem. And I will also send you his my minis page. So I got all of this for a tenner.
Ooh, some of these are pretty.
So from the Spirit Dragon up, I've got, and some of these are fantastic minis. He is not doing your generic stuff for the most part, but they are incredibly cool. I mean, the Mind Flayer Dragon is a thing of nightmares.
Oh, the Aboleths.
There's some great, really great stuff in here. I really like the Werewolf Dragon as well. That's pretty cool. I also backed Anvil Industries, which is what I keep thinking about. Do I keep up? Just because it's essentially Anvil Industries, it's to supplement their regiments line, which is their kind of not guard. And every time I think about cancelling it, they release a theme that I go, that's pretty cool. So they're doing trenches this month, which so kind of World War I style dudes, and they include a mini tankette with a guy, and you can give him a sword, and he can hang out of this very small tank with a sword, and it's very cool. So what was the kind of this? Right, let's see. I think Games Workshop is probably fine from 3D printers. Yes, there are 40k 3D printing groups out there, and if you look around, you can get a lot of stuff which is very, very good. So I'm sending through some links to Thingiverse, which is a great, which is the go-to for free stuff.
Ooh.
Now, obviously, they all have slightly silly names.
Yes.
Mostly to try and fool James Workshop as he hunts through for people blatantly copying their minis.
See, just as a very quick aside here, I'm just looking, Retro Space Warrior backpack. Back in the day, I would have killed for something like this for Sisters of Battle backpacks, because there was no way to buy them separately from the box set.
Yeah.
So if you lost your backpack, that was it. You had a sister without a backpack.
This is the bit I'm kind of. This is probably the next point to make. I'm I'm also sending for you a photo of, this isn't on Thingiverse, you've got to know who to ask for these.
Ooh.
But those are, as I said, I've got quite into second edition aesthetic recently, so I've been looking to try and get some replacement arms and backpacks. Now, luckily there is a guy, if you're in the right Facebook group and you know what to ask, he is going through and scanning in the various plastic sprues from second edition for 3D printing. Now, that probably needs some work because you're wasting a lot of resin on the sprues there. Yeah. But they are fantastic. I won't include this picture in the show notes just because I don't want to get the guy in trouble. He's doing the Emperor's work because he's meaning a lot of armless lead minis now have arms and backpacks.
Yeah.
And it was seeing this is what made me go, okay, Games Workshop doesn't need to get into 3D printing. They will be completely fine without it. Their market is, you get them in while they're young. You get them to make poor financial decisions for the rest of their lives buying tiny plastic soldiers. And their business model works. I don't see that changing.
Yeah. It worked on all of us. It'll work on generations to come.
Yeah. And I think we're a long way off every home having a 3D printer. Yeah. I think that is the point where they might need to worry about. But I think that's not something that's 5, 10, that's 30, 40 years off if it even happens. For every home to have a 3D printer that's of good enough quality and easy enough to use.
I was going to say we don't have every home with broadband yet, so I think we're a ways off 3D printers in every home.
Yeah, just a bit.
So it's going to be, for the foreseeable future, it will remain a niche hobby tool. Yeah. But at the same time, if you're into 40k and this kind of stuff, I can see a lot more people buying 3D printers. So I think there is a market for Games Workshop to get involved and do something with 3D printing.
Oh, now, like even stuff that hasn't been available for the last 20 years, release it as an STL.
Well, that's what I was saying. So I think they've got two ways they could go with this. Now, they have their made-to-order scheme, which is always a bit crap, to be completely honest. It's always very expensive, and you don't get a lot of notice. It's like, I'd love to have some Vestrorum Guard, but Vestrorum Guard dropped with a week's notice, and it was very expensive, to the point that it was like, well, no, I can't justify buying that. But if they made those available as an STL, that's something that I think there's two ways they can do it. They can go niche and they can go retro. What I mean by going retro is they have such a great back catalogue, and the quality of 3D scanners nowadays, you can literally scan them in. I say, the sprues I've sent you, they were scanned in. They were not sculpted. I believe he did some tinkering in a 3D engine afterwards to fix a few little problems, but the majority of those sprues were scanned in. Now, this is why I say I think Games Workshop, if they're going to do this, they need to do it within the next couple of years. Because at the moment, 3D scanners are expensive. They are nowhere near the cheapness, in inverted commas, of 3D printers. Interesting aside, when I told my granddad, he was a prototyping engineer for most of his life, so made prototypes for production stuff. Also big into his hobbying. That's probably where I've got it from. Almost certainly. He did like dinky toys and all that kind of stuff, like restoring them.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, does that mean if I send you one of my models, can you scan it in? And then, because he's seen a lot of people on eBay selling conversion kits for specific military vehicles. And he was like, oh, if I can get a digital copy of that, then we can sell it. But at the moment, 3D scanners are about 700 quid when I looked on Amazon earlier. And it was just a quick Amazon search, so there might be a cheaper version to go. But the cheap scanners, they're very, very potato quality.
Yeah, they don't do a fantastic job.
No, they don't. But you can get, if you've got access to one of the really good ones, the quality you can get off them is fantastic. I believe the guy who's done those sprues has access through his work, I assume, to a high-quality 3D scanner.
So, just to ask the question, The scanner's basically a ton of DSLR cameras taking multiple angle shots.
There are different ways of doing it. I think I sent you through a couple of links to some YouTube videos, which I'll include in the show notes. So you can do an SLR, and there was a rig that basically you put the SLR on a camera on the rig, and it moves it round and takes photos, and then uses photogrammetry. I should be able to say that word. I use it at work, but I can never say it.
Photogrammetry?
That's the monkey. Using some clever photogrammetry, you can make a 3D model of what you take a photo of. The other one you can do is literally it's a laser scanner, and I believe
cool.
those. The thing is, 3D scanners I've not looked into as much because I kind of saw the cheapest model on Amazon I can find. The cheapest recommended model on Amazon was £700, and that was like, nope, that's out of my price range.
So that's a month's rent gone right there.
Yeah. So I think, but again, they're already going to get cheaper. 5-10 years, 3D scanners will probably be where 3D printers are now.
Yeah.
And at that point, why do I need Games Workshop to get to for my old models? Say I want to do a classic Praetorians. I've always wanted to do Praetorians, but the cost of them on eBay is prohibitive to do anything more than a kill team.
Yeah.
Would the cost between buying one of each of the sculpts, scanning it in, and then I could just flog the originals off?
Yeah. But then you've also got the option, once you've scanned them in, to tweak the poses and come up with entirely new poses.
Well, that's the other thing. It also means that even once you print them off, I don't like cutting up old metal minis. I don't do this because they're out of production. So especially a lot of the old guard stuff are probably never going to come back. The old Cadians are probably never going to come back. So if you cut up an old Cadian, that's it. That model is now gone.
Yeah.
But if I 3D printed it, if I screw it up, who cares? I'll just print another one off.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and that's
sense.
I would want Games Workshop to do this, as in digitize your back catalogue. You don't need to do everything. You don't need to do your limited edition models. You can keep those as nice and special. But there are so many really cool models in your back catalogue that are just great.
Yeah.
Scan them in, avail them as put them up as an SLD. The other way I was thinking of doing this is Games Workshop could commit to 3D printing in a different way, and then in going more niche. What do I mean by niche? So, Forge World used to do a lot of upgrade kits for 40k specifically. They've kind of tailed that back to be just aimed towards the Horus Heresy and their specialist games. But they used to do a lot more than that. I mean, there was the Eldar Corsairs. What was it? The whole. I don't know if I think most of their battlesuits around there, but there was a larger range, and they had additional models for the Cadians, and they had the Elysium drop troops. Now, I know a lot of people were quite upset when the Elysians went last chance to buy, just because they are a very cool guard army. If Games Workshop wanted to, they could go into a more niche armies delivered via 3D printing.
Yeah.
So there are so many cool guard regiments, but the only two kits you've got are Cadians and Catachans. For the average person, that's it. Games Workshop could expand that out and have a whole range of 3D printable guard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I had this idea and went, well, okay, that's the guard, fine. Could you do that for other factions? I went, well, yes, Chaos and Space Marines, there's just variants you could do printable upgrade kits, different traitor guard regiments, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, shoulder guards come to mind.
You could basically have a STL of every chapter they've ever come up with. I mean, they're probably already on Shapeways anyway.
Well, they are, yeah. But
that is probably the problem, is there is a whole cottage industry around this, so maybe Games Workshop doesn't need to do it, but it would be cool for them to. The other thought I had was, okay, that's Imperium, which is a big market share. There's probably enough market share there to justify it. But also for stuff like Xenos. I've already mentioned they could do Eldar Corsairs, Exodite Warriors, Exodites.
Yeah.
The other one I had was for Gene Stealer cults. Now, at the moment, there's only human Gene Stealer cults, and I think there'll only ever be human Gene Stealer cults. You could have a whole range of 3D printable upgrade kits for orcs to make orc Gene Stealer cults.
Yeah.
Why not?
That would be very cool.
And that's one way of doing it. And Games Workshop could go crazy with this. The other way I thought was to they could do it via paid mods, would be the way I'd describe it.
Yeah.
Create a platform which they QC for creators to host their models on. Obviously, have them QC it, approve it, so it all still feels like a Games Workshop miniature. Bring the community in.
Yeah.
Now, I think that's quite unlikely being Games Workshop, but it would be nice to see. So that's kind of my ramble on 3D printing and where it's at the moment, and how I wish Games Workshop. Look, Games Workshop, you're not listening to this, but
if you are, seriously consider digitizing your back catalogue. It's just sat there, not doing a lot. Hell, pay me to do it. I'll digitize your back catalogue. Just give me a 3D scanner and a budget to go and hunt down old models, and I'll go and 3D digitize your back catalogue. So that's my ramble over. What are your guys' thoughts on what I have said? I do agree. I think that there is a huge market for the mod side of things, as you put it. Without trying to land anyone in trouble, there's a certain store on Shapeways that I have bought a lot of shoulder guards for Amy's Space Wolves, because she wanted the Death Wolves logo on her Thunderwolf cavalry. Games Workshop don't do that, and they don't do a transfer for it. So, you're going to sit and freehand paint the Death Wolves logo on every Marine? Probably not. We'll go 3D printing.
Not your average hobbyist. No, not your average hobbyist.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty much with you, as I don't think we're going to have a voice of dissent here. Because I think it makes sense. I mean, to be honest, what you've described, we already see in the purely digital industry. I'm thinking in particular of the Elder Scrolls franchise and the amazingly huge modding community that sprung up around all of that. I know it's not quite the same thing because we're dealing with physical stuff, but at the same time, it's the public providing what the manufacturer will not, or has not, or cannot, or whatever. I don't really see, even if I didn't consider it a positive, which I do, I don't see how they could stop it.
They can't really stop it, and it's at the moment there is so many people already on various sites printing off stuff for 40k, and there is some awesome stuff out there, and I don't know whether I should share it or not, because I don't want them getting copyright claimed by Games Workshop.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Yeah,
I think that's it.
Silence for now, I think.
Yeah. And it would just be nice. And the other thing you could do is you could do variant patterns of vehicles. So, you can, if you know where to look and what to search, you can find a 3D printed Titan, multiple 3D printed Titans.
Yeah.
Now, I don't quite feel right printing off a Warhound Titan that is basically a carbon copy of the Forge World one.
Yeah. Just but because that's the difference between full-on pirating a full copy of the game and modding a game that you've already bought.
Yeah. But if someone was selling, if someone had put up, say, the Armorcast Titans, really ridiculously silly ones that I kind of want, because they would go very well with my second edition Ultramarines. I wouldn't have a problem with printing one of those off, because it's nothing that Games Workshop's ever going to produce again. It would be nice to see them do it, but I think realistically they're probably not. Again, unless of course you hear this Games Workshop and go, oh, these fellas are making a good point. In which case, our email address is in the contacts, and I will actually check it.
Well, stranger things have happened, let's face it.
This is true.
Yeah.
As I've mentioned to Theff a few times, if I won the lottery, I would consider setting up a game studio. Because realistically, if you went the 3D printing route, what do you need? You need to hire a sculptor. You need to hire a rules writer.
Yep.
Obviously, you need a good idea that people are going to buy, which is the hard part. But it's not like you need to send a bloke over to China to talk to someone in a factory about making a mold. Yeah.
I can think of people within our friendship group that meet all of those things. And I know there are ideas out there for games that we've had collectively. So. Yeah.
Oh God, zombies.
Zombies is one. I'm kind of working on it in the background, but of kind of a dinosaur game. I won't go into details just in case I do actually get around to finishing it off. But it's 3D printing is going to change the hobby. That's not exactly a controversial statement.
Yeah. When you say that, I mentioned a little 40k scale Samus Aran model that I got from Shapeways earlier. I can honestly say this is the culmination of 18 years of trying to work out how the fuck to get a 40k scale Samus just because I've wanted one ever since I was 13 years old and played Metroid Prime.
Well, that's it. You can do very niche models, and there will be enough people who are interested. Yeah. As I said, the airships are ridiculous. They are mental. But there was enough people. How much did they make on? I think they made like $250,000 on Kickstarter.
I think I remember something like in the region of 280,000. So yeah, a lot,
a lot. And that's it. And the problem is there are so many of those now. It's I say now I've been a Patreon to one. You just get bombarded with them on Facebook. But yeah, it's an interesting place the hobby is in, and I'd be interested to hear what other people think. So if you've listened to this and disagree, I'd generally like someone to disagree and say, no, this is a silly idea. Games Workshop should not do it. There are solid arguments. They say there are already people doing it. They've kind of missed the boat on it. But yeah, I would be interested to hear other people's thoughts.
Yeah.
So with that, I think we're probably coming to the end. Thank you very much for letting me rant tonight.
It's been fun.
That's all right. You've certainly let me rant on a few occasions. It's only fair.
That's fair. So we'll be back again next week. I don't know what we're going to be talking about. We'll be talking about something.
Magic the Gathering.
Okay, we'll
I'll let my vote.
Theff, what would you like to talk about?
Oh, we'll talk in between episodes, but
cool.
There'll be a topic.
I am perfectly willing to discuss this off stream. That's fine.
Excellent, cool. Right, well, with that, it's good night from me.
Good night from me.
And me.
Thank you for listening to Astrocast. We are a Tinker Tailor Soldier Sponge Productions. Feel free to click on our website to find all the links to all the other podcasts that are produced by the network. All contact information and social media will be in the doobly-doo down below. And there is a Patreon that supports all of the stuff done by Tinker Tailor Soldier Sponge. Go through there. If you think this drivel was worth something, throw us £1. We would be eternally grateful.
Good evening and welcome to the bar. Join Dr. Wilko as he investigates the histories of your favourite spirits and your favourite cocktails while mixing you a drink at the bar. The other bars may be closed, but a podcast bar will always remain open.